Ryan had always been the kind of guy who blended into the background. At 22, he spent most of his time alone, which was exactly how he liked it. Well, that's what he told himself anyway. Deep down, he knew he was just as scared to be around people. Every morning started the same way. His alarm would go off at 6:30, and he'd roll out of bed in his tiny apartment near the university. The place wasn't much to look at, just a studio with a bed, a desk covered in astronomy books, and a small kitchen that he barely used. But it was quiet, and quiet was good. Ryan was studying astronomy, which seemed perfect for someone who preferred looking at distant stars rather than talking to people nearby. He'd always been fascinated by space, ever since his dad gave him his first telescope when he was 8. Now, 15 years later, he was working on his graduate degree and spending most of his time at the university observatory. The walk to campus took exactly 12 minutes. Ryan had timed it many times. He liked knowing exactly how long things would take because surprises made him nervous. Along the way, he passed the same coffee shop where other students gathered. Laughing and talking loudly, Ryan would look through the windows sometimes, wondering what it felt like to be that comfortable around people. His classes were small, which was both good and bad. Good because there weren't many people to stare at him if he had to speak. Bad because there weren't many people to hide behind either. Professor Martinez, his advisor, was always trying to get him to participate more in discussions. Ryan, what do you think about the new data from the Kepler telescope? She'd ask, and Ryan would feel his face turn red as everyone looked at him. It's interesting, he'd mumble, then spend the rest of the class wishing he could disappear. But when Ryan was alone with the telescopes, everything changed. Up on the observatory roof, surrounded by the massive instruments that could see billions of miles into space, he felt like he belonged somewhere. The stars didn't judge him. They didn't expect him to make small talk or laugh at jokes he didn't understand. His research partner, Alex, was the opposite of Ryan in every way. Where Ryan was quiet, Alex was loud. Where Ryan avoided people, Alex collected friends like some people collected stamps. Alex meant well, but he couldn't understand why Ryan didn't want to go to parties or hang out at the student center. Dude, you're missing out on life, Alex would say, usually while trying to convince Ryan to come to some social event. There's this girl in my physics class who I think you'd really like. She's quiet too, and she's into all that space stuff. Ryan would always make excuses. He had too much work to do, or he was tired, or he had plans to reorganize his research notes. The truth was, the thought of talking to a girl, especially one Alex thought he'd like, made his stomach feel like he'd swallowed a handful of butterflies. Most evenings, Ryan would grab a sandwich from the vending machine and head back to the observatory. The night sky was his favorite time to work. The campus would get quiet, and he could focus on what really mattered, the mysteries hidden in the darkness above. Lately, though, something had been bothering him for the past few weeks. He'd been tracking what looked like unusual energy readings from a star system about 40 light years away. The patterns didn't match anything in the textbooks. The energy signatures were too regular, too structured. It was almost like, but that was crazy. Ryan pushed the thought away every time it came up. There had to be a normal explanation. Maybe it was just interference from a satellite, or maybe his equipment needed calibration. Still, he couldn't stop looking at the data. Tonight was different, though. As Ryan climbed the stairs to the observatory, he noticed something odd. The security guard, Mr. Peterson, was nowhere to be seen. Usually, Peterson would be making his rounds, checking to make sure all the doors were locked and the equipment was secure. Ryan shrugged it off. Maybe Peterson was just running late. It happened sometimes. The observatory felt different in the darkness. During the day, it was full of students and professors, all busy with their own projects. But at night, it became Ryan's private kingdom. He could work without interruption, lost in the endless puzzle of the universe. He settled in at his favorite telescope and began adjusting the settings. The unusual energy readings had been getting stronger over the past few days. And tonight Ryan was determined to figure out what was causing them. He brought extra coffee and had cleared his schedule for the next day, just in case he needed to work all night, as he focused the telescope on the distant star system. Ryan felt that familiar excitement that came with discovery. This was why he'd chosen astronomy, out here, alone with the stars. He wasn't the shy guy who couldn't order coffee without stuttering. He was a scientist, an explorer, someone who could unlock the secrets of the cosmos. The energy readings appeared on his screen, more intense than ever before. Ryan frowned and adjusted the settings, thinking maybe there was something wrong with the equipment. But the readings stayed the same, strong, regular, and completely unlike anything he'd ever seen. Then something happened that made Ryan's blood run cold. The readings suddenly spiked, jumping off the charts. At the same time, he heard a sound that didn't belong in the quiet night, a low humming that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Ryan looked up from his screen and gasped. The sky above the observatory was filled with lights that definitely weren't stars. They moved in perfect formation, too organized to be meteors, too coordinated to be natural. They were getting brighter, and they were getting closer. His hand shook as he reached for his phone to call Professor Martinez. But before he could dial, the lights suddenly changed direction, moving in ways that defied every law of physics he'd ever learned. One of them broke away from the group and began descending rapidly toward the observatory. Ryan's mind raced. This couldn't be happening. Things like this didn't happen to people like him. He was just a quiet graduate student who liked looking at stars. He wasn't ready for whatever was about to happen next. But as the light grew brighter and the humming grew louder, Ryan realized that, ready or not, his ordinary life was about to become anything but ordinary. Ryan's heart was beating so fast he thought it might burst out of his chest. The bright light was getting closer, and the humming sound was getting louder. He wanted to run, but his legs felt like they were made of concrete. All he could do was watch as the impossible thing in the sky came down toward the observatory. The light landed in the courtyard below with a soft thud, not the crash Ryan had expected. For a moment, everything went completely silent. Even the crickets had stopped chirping. Ryan stood frozen at the telescope, not sure if he should hide or investigate. Then he heard something that made his blood run cold. Footsteps. But they weren't normal footsteps. They were too light, too quick, almost like someone was dancing across the pavement. Ryan crept to the edge of the observatory roof and looked down. What he saw made him question everything he thought he knew about the world. A girl was standing in the courtyard, and she was the most beautiful person Ryan had ever seen. But something was wrong with the picture. Her hair was silver, not blonde or gray, but actually silver like moonlight, and it seemed to glow with its own light. Her skin had a strange shimmer to it, like she was covered in the finest glitter that caught light from sources that weren't there. But what really made Ryan's jaw drop were her eyes, even from the roof. He could see them clearly, and they looked like they held entire galaxies. They sparkled and swirled with colors that had no names. The girl looked around the courtyard, confused and scared. She was wearing clothes that Ryan couldn't quite figure out. They looked like they were made from liquid starlight, flowing and changing as she moved. Then she stumbled, and Ryan saw something that made his protective instincts kick in for the first time in his life. She was hurt. A dark substance was leaking from her shoulder, and she was holding her arm like it was in pain. As Ryan watched, she fell to her knees, clearly struggling to stay conscious. That's when he heard the security golf cart approaching. Mr. Peterson's voice echoed across the campus as he radioed for backup. "I've got some kind of disturbance at the observatory. Requesting immediate assistance." Ryan's mind raced. If security found this girl, they'd ask questions she obviously couldn't answer. They'd call the police, maybe even the military, and something told Ryan that would be very bad for her. Without thinking, Ryan did something he'd never done before in his life. He acted on pure instinct. "Hey," he called down to the girl, his voice cracking with nervousness. "Up here." The girl looked up, and when their eyes met, Ryan felt something he'd never experienced before. It was like being struck by lightning, but in a good way. She was looking at him with hope, like he was the answer to a prayer she'd been too scared to make. "Can you climb?" Ryan asked, pointing to the fire escape ladder on the side of the building. The girl nodded and started moving toward the ladder. Despite being injured, she climbed with an impossible grace. Like gravity didn't quite apply to her the same way it did to everyone else. Ryan helped her onto the roof, just as the security lights swept the courtyard below. Up close, she was even more incredible. Her silver hair moved like it was underwater, and her skin had patterns that looked like constellations. But what struck Ryan most was how scared she looked. Despite being something clearly not from this world, she seemed as frightened as he was. "Are you okay?" Ryan whispered. Even though he had no idea if she could understand him, the girl looked at him with those galaxy eyes and opened her mouth to speak. What came out wasn't quite English, but somehow Ryan understood it anyway. The words seemed to appear directly in his mind. "Help me," she said, and her voice sounded like music from a dream. "They're coming. They'll hurt everyone." Ryan felt his shy, nervous personality melt away. This girl needed help, and for the first time in his life, someone was counting on him. It didn't matter that she was clearly not human. It didn't matter that helping her would turn his quiet, safe life upside down. "My apartment," he said, surprising himself with how steady his voice sounded. "It's not far. Can you walk?" The girl nodded, though she was still holding her injured shoulder. Ryan looked around the observatory, grabbed his jacket, and carefully helped her wrap it around herself to hide the worst of her unusual appearance. Getting down from the observatory without being seen was like something out of a spy movie. Ryan had never been athletic, but fear and determination gave him abilities he didn't know he had. He guided the girl through shadows and back alleys, avoiding the main paths where security might spot them every step of the way. Ryan kept expecting to wake up and find out this was all a very strange dream. But the girl's weight against his shoulder was real. The way she trembled when they heard sirens in the distance was real. And the grateful look she gave him when they finally reached his apartment was more real than anything he'd ever experienced. His tiny studio apartment had never felt smaller. The girl looked around with curiosity and wonder, like she was seeing things she'd only heard about in stories. She touched his telescope with gentle fingers and examined his astronomy books with obvious intelligence. "You study the stars," she said, and this time the words came out in perfect English, though they still had that musical quality. "Yes," Ryan replied, settling her on his couch and grabbing his first aid kit. "And I think you came from them." The girl smiled for the first time, and it was like watching the sun rise. "My name is Luna," she said, "and yes, I came from very far away." As Ryan carefully cleaned the wound on her shoulder, Luna began to tell him a story that would change everything he thought he knew about the universe. She spoke of a world among the stars, of her people who had been watching Earth for generations, and of a terrible danger that was coming. "I was sent as a messenger," Luna explained, wincing as Ryan applied bandages. "My people wanted to warn yours, but the others, the ones who want to conquer, they found me first." Ryan's hand shook as he finished treating her wound. "Conquer?" Luna's galaxy eyes filled with sadness. "They believe humans are weak, that your world would be easy to take. I came to prove them wrong, to show them that humans are capable of kindness and strength. But now they know I'm here, and they'll come looking for me," as if summoned by her words. A low humming sound began to fill the air outside. It was the same sound Ryan had heard at the observatory, but now it was getting closer. Luna grabbed Ryan's hand, and he felt a shock of energy pass between them. "They're here," she whispered. "And now you're in danger too." Ryan looked at this incredible girl who had fallen from the stars into his ordinary life, and he made a decision that would change everything. He wasn't going to let anyone hurt her, not if he could help it. For the first time in his life, Ryan wasn't afraid. The humming sound outside Ryan's apartment faded away after what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Luna sat on his couch, her silver hair now dim with exhaustion, watching the window with worried eyes. Ryan had never felt so protective of another person in his entire life. "They're gone," Luna whispered. her voice still carrying that musical quality that made Ryan's heart skip. For now, Ryan brought her a glass of water, his hands shaking slightly. Who are they? I mean, what do they want? Luna took a small sip and looked at him with those galaxy eyes. They are my people, but not really. We used to be one, but now we are divided. She paused, seeming to search for the right words. Think of it like a family that had a big fight and split apart over the next few days. Ryan's life became something he never could have imagined. He called in sick to his classes, something he'd never done before, and spent every waking moment with Luna. She was healing quickly, much faster than any human would, but she was still weak. During those days, Ryan learned more about the universe than all his astronomy classes had ever taught him. Luna would touch his hand, and suddenly his mind would be filled with images of her world, a place called Etheria, where cities floated among the clouds and people could fly without machines. Your world is beautiful, Ryan said one afternoon as they sat together on his couch. Sharing another vision of her home was beautiful, Luna corrected sadly. The war changed everything. Some of my people believe we should stay hidden among the stars, living in peace. Others wanted to expand, to take over worlds like yours. Ryan felt a chill run down his spine. And you're on the peaceful side? Luna nodded. I volunteered to come here because I believed humans were worth saving. I've been watching your world for years, learning about your people. I've seen acts of kindness that would make even the coldest heart warm. As the days passed, Ryan found himself changing in ways he never expected. Luna's presence made him feel braver, more confident. When she smiled at him, he felt like he could do anything. When she laughed at his jokes, he felt funnier than he'd ever been. You're different from what I expected, Luna said one evening as they watched the sunset from his small window. Different how? Ryan asked, though he was afraid of the answer. Stronger. She replied simply, when I first saw you on that roof, I thought you were just a scared young man. But now I see the real you, the one who risked everything to help a stranger. Ryan felt his face turn red. I was terrified. I still am, most of the time. Luna reached over and took his hand. When their skin touched, Ryan felt that electric connection again, stronger than before. Being scared doesn't make you weak, she said. Being scared and still doing what's right makes you brave. But their peaceful days couldn't last forever. On the fourth night, Ryan was woken by a sound that made his blood freeze. It was Luna, crying out in her sleep. But these weren't normal nightmare sounds. They were filled with a terror that seemed to come from somewhere beyond this world. Ryan gently shook her awake, and she grabbed onto him like he was the only solid thing in a world that was spinning out of control. They're coming, she whispered against his shoulder. I can feel them getting closer. They know I'm here. Then we'll face them together, Ryan said, surprising himself with how steady his voice sounded. Luna pulled back to look at him. You don't understand what you're saying. These aren't just bullies from school. They have powers that could destroy your entire city without thinking twice about it. Ryan took her hands in his. Maybe I don't understand everything about what's happening, but I understand that you're important. Not just to me, but to everyone. And I understand that I'm not going to let anyone hurt you. The next morning, Luna began teaching Ryan things that no human had ever learned before. She showed him how to sense the energy that flowed through all living things. She taught him to recognize the signs that her people were near, the way electronics would malfunction, how animals would act strangely, and how the air itself would feel different. Your mind is stronger than most humans, Luna explained as they practiced in his apartment. You can learn to protect yourself, maybe even help me protect others. Ryan found that he had a natural talent for these new abilities. Maybe it was because he'd spent so many years studying the patterns of the universe. Or maybe it was because Luna was such a good teacher. Either way, he was learning fast. But the most important thing Luna taught him wasn't about powers or energy. It was about trust. For the first time in his life, Ryan had someone who believed in him completely. Someone who saw past his shyness and social awkwardness to the person he really was inside. On my world, Luna said one evening as they practiced. Together, We have a saying, 2 hearts that beat as one can move mountains. I never understood what it meant until I met you. Ryan felt his heart pound. What does it mean? Luna looked at him with such tenderness that Ryan felt like he might melt. It means that when two people truly care about each other, they can do impossible things. That night, as they sat together, watching the stars through his window, Ryan realized that his feelings for Luna had grown beyond friendship or even attraction. He was falling in love with her, and that terrified him more than any alien invasion ever could. But before he could tell her how he felt, the humming sound returned. This time, it was right outside his building. Luna stood up quickly, her silver hair beginning to glow with alarm. They found us, she said. We have to go, now. Ryan grabbed the emergency bag they prepared and took Luna's hand. Where can we go that's safe? Luna's galaxy eyes filled with determination. There's a place, other members of my people, who chose to stay hidden on Earth. They've been waiting for someone like me to find them. As they prepared to leave the apartment that had been their safe haven, Ryan felt a strange mix of fear and excitement. His old life was over, but something new and amazing was beginning. And whatever happened next, he wouldn't be facing it alone. Luna squeezed his hand as they prepared to step into the unknown. Ready? She asked. Ryan looked at this incredible girl who had changed his entire world, and he smiled. With you, I'm ready for anything. Together, they stepped out into the night, not knowing what dangers awaited them, but knowing they would face them together. And for the first time in his life, Ryan felt truly alive. Ryan and Luna ran through the empty streets, their footsteps echoing off the buildings around them. The humming sound was getting louder, and Ryan could feel something in the air that made his skin tingle with electricity. Luna's hand, in his, was the only thing keeping him from panicking completely. This way, Luna whispered, pulling him toward an alley between 2 old buildings. We need to stay off the main roads. As they ducked into the shadows, Ryan saw something that made his heart stop. 3 figures were walking down the street they'd just left, and they definitely weren't human. They moved too smoothly, too perfectly, like they were gliding instead of walking. And they were tall, much taller than any person Ryan had ever seen. Those are them. Luna breathed, pressing herself against the brick wall. The hunters, Ryan watched as the figures stopped exactly where he and Luna had been standing just moments before. One of them, who seemed to be the leader, raised his hand and made a gesture that reminded Ryan of someone casting a spell. Suddenly, the street lights began flickering, and every car alarm in the area started going off. They're tracking us, Luna explained, her voice barely audible over the noise. My energy leaves a trail they can follow. The leader of the hunters turned his head toward their hiding spot, and Ryan got his first clear look at one of Luna's people. The being was beautiful in a cold, frightening way. His skin was pale blue, almost white, and his hair was jet black. But it was his eyes that made Ryan's blood run cold. They were completely silver, with no pupils at all. Commander Vex, Luna whispered, and Ryan could hear the fear in her voice. He's the one who destroyed my home city. Commander Vex said something in a language that sounded like music mixed with thunder. The other 2 hunters spread out, obviously beginning a search. Pattern. Ryan realized they had maybe minutes before being discovered. We need to move, he whispered to Luna. Now, they crept through the alley, staying in the deepest shadows. Luna seemed to know exactly where to go, leading them through a maze of back streets and hidden passages that Ryan never knew existed in his own town. Behind them, the sounds of the hunt continued, car alarms, flickering lights, and that awful humming that seemed to come from everywhere at once. There, Luna pointed to an old subway entrance that had been closed for years. Down there, Ryan had never broken into anything in his life, but he found himself helping Luna pry open the rusted gate. The metal groaned in protest, and Ryan was sure the sound would give them away. But somehow, they managed to get inside and pull the gate closed behind them. The abandoned subway tunnel was dark and smelled like old water and forgotten places. Luna's hair provided just enough light for them to see where they were going. As they walked deeper into the tunnels, Ryan could hear the hunters searching the streets above them. How do you know about this place? Ryan asked, trying to keep his voice steady. I've been on Earth for longer than you think, Luna replied. I've been preparing for this day for months. I knew they would come eventually. They walked for what felt like hours, though Ryan's phone said it had only been 30 minutes. The tunnel system was like a hidden city beneath the real one, with passages leading in every direction. Luna seemed to know exactly where she was going, leading them deeper and deeper underground. Finally, they reached a section of tunnel that looked different from the rest. The walls were covered in symbols that seemed to glow with their own light, and Ryan could feel energy in the air that made his skin hum. We're here, Luna said, stopping in front of what looked like a solid wall. Luna placed her hand against the wall and whispered something in her musical language. The wall began to shimmer and fade, revealing a doorway that definitely hadn't been there a moment before. How did you? Ryan started to ask, but Luna was already pulling him through the doorway. On the other side was a place that took Ryan's breath away. It was like stepping into a piece of Luna's home world. The space was huge, much bigger than should have been possible given where they were. Plants that glowed with soft light grew along the walls, and the air was filled with the sound of gently flowing water. Welcome to the sanctuary, a voice said from the shadows. Ryan spun round to see a figure approaching them. It was another of Luna's people, but this one felt different, peaceful instead of threatening. Her hair was golden instead of silver, and her eyes were warm brown instead of cold silver. Nova, Luna said, relief flooding her voice. Thank the stars you're safe. Nova smiled and embraced Luna like a sister. We felt you arrive on Earth weeks ago, but we couldn't risk making contact until now. The hunters have been watching everything. Ryan looked around the sanctuary in amazement. There were at least a dozen of Luna's people here, all living and hiding beneath the city. Some were tending to the glowing plants. Others were working with technology that Ryan couldn't even begin to understand. You brought a human, Nova observed, but she didn't sound angry about it, just curious. I brought a friend, Luna corrected. Ryan saved my life, and he's been helping me ever since. Nova studied Ryan with those warm brown eyes. You're different from other humans. I can sense it. You have potential. Before Ryan could ask what that meant, alarms began sounding throughout the sanctuary. The peaceful atmosphere was shattered as everyone began moving with urgent purpose. They found us, someone shouted. The hunters are at the outer barriers. Nova's expression turned serious. How many? All of them, came the reply. Commander. Vex brought his entire fleet. Ryan felt Luna's hand grip his tighter. I'm sorry, she whispered. I've brought danger to everyone. No, Nova said firmly. You brought hope. We've been waiting for someone like you to arrive, someone who could prove that humans and our people can work together. The sanctuary erupted into organized chaos as everyone prepared for what was coming. Ryan watched in amazement as Luna's people revealed abilities he'd only dreamed of. Some could manipulate energy with their bare hands, others could make themselves invisible, and a few could even fly. What can I do? Ryan asked, feeling completely out of his depth. Nova smiled at him. You can do the most important thing of all. You can show them that humans are worth saving. The barriers around the sanctuary began to shake as the hunters attacked from above. Ryan could hear Commander Vex shouting orders in that musical thunder language, and he knew their time was running out. There's something you need to know, Luna said, taking both of Ryan's hands in hers. The reason the hunters are so determined to find me isn't just because I'm a messenger. Ryan looked into her galaxy eyes, seeing fear and determination mixed together. What do you mean? I'm not just any messenger, Luna explained. I'm the daughter of the leader of the peaceful faction. If Commander Vex captures me, he can use me to force my father to surrender. The entire resistance depends on keeping me safe. Ryan felt the weight of that responsibility settle on his shoulders. This wasn't just about protecting someone he cared about anymore. This was about the fate of two worlds. Then we don't let him capture you, Ryan said, surprised by how confident he sounded. The barriers shattered, and the hunters poured into the sanctuary. Commander Vex stood at the entrance, his silver eyes scanning the room until they found Luna. There you are, little princess, he said, his voice carrying easily across the space. "It's time to come home." Luna stepped forward, her chin raised. Defiantly, "This is my home now." Commander Vex laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Hiding among these primitive creatures, you disappoint me." That's when Ryan did something that surprised everyone, including himself. He stepped up beside Luna, facing down the most dangerous being he'd ever encountered. "These primitive creatures have names," Ryan said, his voice steady despite the terror racing through his veins. "And we don't let bullies hurt our friends." Commander Vex looked at Ryan like he was seeing him for the first time. How interesting. The pet has developed a backbone. The final confrontation was about to begin, and Ryan knew that everything he learned about courage, love, and standing up for what's right was about to be put to the ultimate test. The sanctuary fell silent except for the crackling of energy in the air. Commander Vex stood at the entrance with his hunters, while Luna's people gathered protectively around their hidden refuge. Ryan could feel the tension building like electricity. "Before a storm, you have caused us considerable trouble, little princess," Commander Vex said, his silver eyes fixed on Luna. "But your game of hiding among the humans ends now." Luna stepped forward, her silver hair beginning to glow with inner light. "I'm not hiding, Vex. I'm choosing." "There's a difference. Choosing?" Commander Vex laughed that awful glass-breaking sound again. "You're choosing to side with beings who can't even leave their own planet, who destroy their own world with pollution and war." "I'm choosing to side with beings who show kindness to strangers," Luna replied, "who risk their lives to help someone they barely know, who love with their whole hearts instead of conquering with their power." Ryan felt his chest swell with pride at her words, but he also felt the weight of responsibility. Everyone in the sanctuary was looking at him as if he represented all of humanity. It was terrifying and inspiring at the same time. "Enough talk," Commander Vex said, raising his hand. Energy began to swirl around his fingers, creating patterns of light that hurt to look at directly. "You will come with us willingly, or we will take you and destroy everything you've grown attached to." That's when Nova stepped forward. "She's not going anywhere, Vex. We've made our choice too." The sanctuary erupted into chaos as the battle began. Luna's people fought with abilities that seemed like magic to Ryan, but Commander Vex's hunters were skilled warriors. Energy blasts lit up the underground chamber, and the air filled with sounds that no human ears were meant to hear. Ryan found himself pressed against the wall, trying to stay out of the way while desperately looking for some way to help. Luna was in the thick of the fighting, her hands glowing with power as she defended her friends. But Ryan could see that they were outnumbered and outgunned. "We need to get you out of here," Nova shouted over the noise of battle, grabbing Ryan's arm. "If they capture you, they'll use you against Luna." "No," Ryan said, pulling away. "I'm not running while she's in danger." That's when he saw it. Commander Vex had broken through the defensive line and was advancing on Luna. She was exhausted from the fight, her glow dim, and Ryan could see she didn't have the strength to defend herself. Time seemed to slow down as Ryan watched Commander Vex raise his hand for a final attack. Luna looked up and saw him coming, and her galaxy eyes filled with a sadness that broke Ryan's heart. She wasn't afraid for herself. She was afraid for what would happen to Earth if she was captured. Without thinking, Ryan did the most foolish and brave thing he'd ever done in his life. He ran straight into the middle of the battle, directly toward Commander Vex. "Ryan, no!" Luna screamed, but he was already committed. Commander Vex turned toward him, surprise flickering across his cold features. "The pet wants to play hero?" He sneered, redirecting his attack toward Ryan. But something incredible happened. As the energy blast headed toward Ryan, Luna threw herself between them. The blast hit her instead, and she fell to the ground, her silver hair dimming to almost nothing. "Luna!" Ryan caught her as she fell, and the moment their hands touched, he felt something extraordinary. All the energy she'd been teaching him to sense suddenly flowed through him like a river of light. But it wasn't just energy, it was love, pure and powerful and unlike anything he'd ever experienced. "I love you," Luna whispered, her voice barely audible. "I should have told you sooner." Ryan felt tears streaming down his face. I love you too. Don't you dare leave me now. Commander Vex stood over them, preparing for the final blow. How touching. The primitive creatures think love can save them. But as Ryan held Luna in his arms, something miraculous began to happen. The love between them, the bond they'd formed over the past weeks, began to glow with its own light. Ryan could feel Luna's strength flowing into him, and his human determination flowing into her. Two hearts that beat as one, Luna whispered, remembering the saying from her world. Can move mountains, Ryan finished, understanding finally what it meant. The light surrounding them grew brighter and brighter, until even Commander Vex had to shield his eyes. When it faded, Ryan and Luna were standing together, their hands joined and their eyes glowing with the same inner light. Impossible. Commander Vex breathed. Humans don't have the capacity for true bonding. This one does, Luna said, her voice strong again, and that changes everything. The battle had stopped as everyone stared at the impossible sight. A human and one of Luna's people, connected by something deeper than either of their species, had thought possible. Your move, Vex, Nova said, stepping up beside them. Are you going to fight love itself? Commander Vex looked around the sanctuary, seeing his hunters outnumbered not just by Luna's people, but by the power of hope they represented. For the first time since Ryan had seen him, the commander looked uncertain. This isn't over, he said finally. The council will hear about this. Good, Luna replied. Tell them that humans and our people can work together. Tell them that love is stronger than conquest. Tell them that Earth is under our protection now. Commander Vex and his hunters retreated, but Ryan knew they would be back. The difference was that now Earth wouldn't be facing them alone. In the days that followed, Luna's people began to reveal themselves to trusted humans around the world. Ryan found himself serving as a bridge between the two species, helping to establish communication and understanding. His shyness was completely gone, replaced by a confidence that came from knowing he was part of something bigger than himself. You've changed so much, Luna said one evening as they sat on the observatory roof where they'd first met. Do you miss your old life? Ryan looked up at the stars. The same stars he'd been studying for years, but which now held new meaning. I miss the simplicity sometimes, he admitted, but I wouldn't trade this for anything. You showed me who I really am, and you showed me what love really means, Luna replied, taking his hand. On my world, we have power over energy and matter, but you humans have power over something much more important. You have power over hearts. As they sat together under the stars, Ryan realized that his story wasn't ending. It was just beginning. He was no longer just a shy graduate student who preferred telescopes to people. He was a guardian, a bridge builder, and most importantly, he was someone who had found love in the most impossible place. The future was uncertain. There would be more challenges, more battles to fight, and more bridges to build between worlds. But Ryan faced it all without fear, because he had learned the most important lesson of all, that love really could move mountains, cross galaxies, and change the fate of entire civilizations. And it had all started with a shy young man who looked up at the stars and saw a girl falling from heaven, straight into his arms and into his heart. The boy who once couldn't order coffee without stuttering now stood ready to help defend two worlds, because sometimes the greatest adventures begin with the smallest act of kindness. And the most powerful force in the universe isn't technology or magic. It's love.